Alright, hello everyone, and thank you for taking time out of the middle of your week to tune into this live stream update. You know, it's a little bit of a quieter time, especially in terms of winter weather for some areas of the country, although the north and some areas in the central and eastern U.S. are also going to begin to get a little bit more active as we push towards February as well. I just wanted to share my thoughts on an upcoming winter storm and the overall weather pattern here in this live update. And this is probably going to be my last piece of content here in 2025's January. As I have a little bit of a busy time ahead, and then I'll be back with you on the weekend with more consistent video updates beginning then that will roll into the following weeks from that point on. So I just want to thank everybody who is tuning into this live stream. If you're with me live or if you're watching later, no matter when you are here, I love it if you'd hit that like button right down below to support this stream. And I'm doing an audio check on my own end, and everything sounds okay. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into the overview for the weather pattern ahead, just like I would do in a normal video. And that starts off here as we go overnight tonight of our Tuesday and into our Wednesday, January 29th of 2025, where across the country, not much is going to be going on, but things are going to change and become more active as we go throughout the day. You can see we've got dry conditions in the Pacific Northwest, dry in the central parts of the country overall, dry in the southeast. A couple areas that we will be watching as early as around Wednesday midday. The snow that will be lasting out of the morning and into this time frame on up here with a clipper system set to bring some hefty accumulations, especially to the interior parts of Pennsylvania and then especially New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, with what could even fall, according to the National Weather Service and Weather Prediction Center, as snow squalls up in these areas as heavy snow comes down out of this particular clipper system moving through. It's also going to bring gusty winds all the way up from the eastern seaboard back up into the Great Lakes on our Wednesday while moving through. Meanwhile, we've got a completely different flow than this northwesterly to southeasterly flow that we're going to have on up here in the northern and eastern U.S. As you shift down here towards the south, a south to north flow beginning to develop into the plains with some rain likely down towards parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. Some of that will activate into thunderstorm mode as we go through the afternoon and evening with a new low pressure system. This is the one I've talked about in the last few videos now. And again, this live stream right here is going to be my final overall timeline on what you can expect out of that. Around Wednesday night going into Thursday morning, snow likely here into some parts of Arizona, New Mexico, and then into the mountains there of southern Colorado. Better chance for more active weather in terms of rainfall and thunderstorms over here into Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and then into Arkansas, Louisiana, and parts of Mississippi as this system begins to continue ramping up. In terms of severe weather risks out of this system, it does look less elevated in comparison to what the Storm Prediction Center was initially thinking for Wednesday into Wednesday night, but in this general zone right here of central Texas, from places like San Antonio, Austin, up to Dallas, points westbound a little bit, this is going to be that overall threat area, and it's especially going to kick off into the evening and nighttime hours Wednesday night going into our Thursday. From there, the system begins to pick up some steam and begin to move east. You can see a little bit of some low pressure getting stuck back there with a little pocket of snow that could continue into eastern Colorado, amping up the totals there into the daytime Thursday, but most of our energy begins moving east. If you're through central Kansas, central Oklahoma, central Texas, it looks like things are going to be moving east of you by the time you get through midday and into the afternoon hours, but that's going to mean, especially on the southern side of this rain, moving its way on up through the mid-Mississippi Valley, down here more towards parts of the Arklatex region and into eastern Texas, as well as into Louisiana. The zone I'm circling on screen here, going to be the focal point area that we're going to have to watch for severe weather into our Thursday afternoon and evening out of this storm. And then from there, our low pressure continues to shift north, and that's going to drag the warm front with it. So you can see here that progression. Look at the low. You've got some of that new low pressure energy that made its way out of the Rockies down here into the south central U.S. Low starts somewhere around the Texarkana area there on the Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas border. And then it begins pivoting on up here towards Illinois and Indiana pretty quickly. This is Thursday around 3, 4 o'clock. And then by the time we get to Friday morning, just 12 hours later, this low really racing on up here into that mid-Mississippi Valley region. As it does so, it drags the warm front with it. And this is your warm front right here. You can see it making its way on up as far north as Iowa, parts of Wisconsin, over to Michigan, and then into the mid-Atlantic. If you're south of where the warm front moves, that's where you're getting warmer air moving in at all layers of the atmosphere, including the surface. And in this case, that's going to mean that this is going to be a mostly rain event for a lot of areas, even as far north as the Midwest, Ohio Valley, and mid-Atlantic, especially as this particular event begins to kick off. Meanwhile, your cold front has some of that warm air to work with out ahead of it because of the warm front that will have already moved through these areas, and that's where we're going to continue to watch some of those thunderstorms moving through into places like Louisiana, Mississippi, northern Alabama, and into Tennessee. Better chance for severe weather, I think, as we go overnight Thursday night into Friday, and then into the day Friday, shifting closer to parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and then maybe towards Georgia and the Carolinas if we can get some thunderstorms to continue there. So overall, the main areas out of this storm, cold rain by this point on Friday morning. This is where we could see some rain and thunder, but nothing severe expected necessarily. And then down here is where we're going to have a little bit better of a chance for some isolated to maybe scattered in severe weather continuing out of Thursday night and then through the day on Friday with this particular storm. Here we go. Let's push things forward. This is as we go through around Friday into the early afternoon hours. Low pressure now shifting on up here. This is a broad forecast. Don't expect it to look specifically like this, but given that we're only a few days out from this point and, less time out from the hours before this, there's pretty high confidence that it's going to look like this. Low pressure moving into the Ohio Valley by the time we go into our Friday afternoon. And just to show you how similar the GFS model is, there it is. There's your Euro. Very similar looks to the overall storm. Euro brings a little bit more rain a little bit further north early on, and that could even make some snow falling up there in the far northern end of the warm front in places like Michigan and over into the interior northeast if we get precip up there into Friday afternoon. But better chance of that is going to be as the storm moves east as we go through the rest of our Friday evening. This is when we get this to turn into a quote-unquote winter storm and not just a regular storm system, as we get some dynamic cooling of the atmosphere where you've got enough rain falling through, even in a warm frontal zone further north, to actually cool layers of the atmosphere as we begin to see this system kind of wrap on up and northerly winds begin to move in as well. We'll start to see some of that towards Michigan, over into New York, and then parts of Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Pretty much the same areas getting snow out of the Clipper system. The best chance of those heavier accumulations are around the point that I am recording this live stream. By the time we go towards around Friday evening, that's when we're going to be watching our next chance of snow as this system moves east. By this point in time, we're going to be watching rain with that cold front continuing to push from the mid-Atlantic back down to the southeast. But as of now, I don't anticipate any major severe weather threat once we start seeing this move into the nighttime, for the same reasons that we're going to see snow breaking out back further north, because, temperatures cool down as the evening rolls on, and this is January into February. Nighttime is not ripe time for severe weather unless you're with the most dynamic parts of these storms, like back down towards the lower Mississippi Valley that we see, especially Thursday evening. Otherwise here, you can see it looks like mainly just regular old rain up and down a lot of the East Coast into our Friday evening, and some of the snow back on up here into New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine could be heavy during that nighttime frame Friday night going into our Saturday, and then from there we're done. And we're just looking at everything that's going to be going on back towards the northwestern U.S. with a setup that looks a lot like what was forecasted to be happening through most of this winter, as a La Nina pattern is setting up across the U.S. Snow and rain back here into the Pacific Northwest. Of course, snow in the higher elevations, rain in the valleys, especially kicking off Friday into Saturday. And it looks like an active pattern will continue plaguing those zones. I mean, look at that. Just already the last 3 days of this particular evening model run of the European model really showing the north as the active weather zone. But eventually, I think as we go towards around February 5th or 6th, that could be when we try to see our next large-scale winter storm get going. The exact location where that happens is going to be unknown, but that's just a little bit further of an overview down the line of what's going to be going on. I digress from that, though, and I want to go ahead and give you a look at the forecasted total precipitation out of this winter storm that I just forecasted that is going to be on the way by the time we go into the end of this week. Let's just start with the beginning of this system, just the first phase of it, let's say, here through around our Thursday evening. Notice this is when we're going to see a lot of that rain from Wednesday night through Thursday night down here into parts of the plains, down to the southern plains, and then over into some parts of the Mississippi Valley. A lot of this back here into the Rockies, falling as snow, as well as back into the Four Corners region. So keep in mind that, this half an inch of rainfall-like moisture that you might get in southern Colorado will come down as snow, and that will be quite considerable in terms of accumulation. But this is your real line. Central Kansas, central Oklahoma, central Texas, and then points east is where your rainfall really picks up. And this just shows you where some of those heavier thunderstorms are going to be. Right here is where we can see an overlap with an isolated flood threat, as we're going to get 1 inch to 3 inches of rain in a lot of eastern Texas based on this guidance, and that severe weather threat. So that's going to be something to watch as we go out of Wednesday into Thursday. Up here, most of this just general rain and thunderstorm activity, but as we continue to watch that rain fill in out of parts of Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri, and into parts of the Ohio Valley, and then back down into Tennessee, that could even cause isolated flooding out of Thursday into Friday. Overall, best chance for flooding is going to be right in here. Otherwise, we're just watching that severe weather potential, especially down in this general corridor. And then over here, a little bit of a potential of flooding and maybe some severe weather back down here. But threats look a lot weaker as this pushes to the east coast, and that's when your winter storm threat picks up. Let me give you a look at the forecasted snowfall currently as of when I'm doing this update. Again, I'm probably not going to have a final update, at least in a video format, on this as we get closer to the event. But you can see what we're looking at here in terms of snow out of this system. Let's go through the phases of it. Let's go through the first part. This is as we go from Wednesday through our Thursday morning, not counting anything that accumulates before that or after. Right here, notice some light accumulations through Arizona, New Mexico, and then especially on that New Mexico-Colorado border as this storm gets going. Remember, this would be the same time we're watching severe weather unfolding, possibly down here with some flooding as well. And then your snow kind of ends, but continues throughout the day into some parts of eastern Colorado, but that area of snow ends. We start our next one pick up, likely maybe some light snow back towards Kansas and Iowa into our Friday afternoon, but the better chance of snow indicated by this signal over here. The fact that this blended guidance I'm showing you right now only shows, a half an inch to maybe a couple of inches from the Wisconsin-Illinois border through southern Michigan over into a lot of New York and into parts of Massachusetts, and then even just a few inches through a lot of interior New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, tells me that the winter storm that we get to finish this week is not going to be an all-out, very impactful winter storm. No one is going to remember this snow up here into parts of the Midwest, Great Lakes, and Northeast, unless you haven't lived in the Northeast until just now, and you came from like the far southern part of Florida, because this storm is just, it's not much of a snow event for anyone here. Chicago might get a few, flakes here or there with an inch possibly trying to get on the ground. But again, this is a very thin swath of snow and don't expect too much out of it. Notice back at that same time, though, Pacific Northwest racking up. This is just a 24-hour time span that this blended guidance is showing over a foot in some of those Cascade areas there of Washington and Oregon, and then down into the northern parts of your mountains there in California. And then we're also looking at a good bit of snow into the eastern Oregon mountains, into parts of Idaho, those higher elevations, at least 3 to 6 inches expected. Again, just from Friday early morning through Saturday early morning. And look, it keeps cranking out in those 24-hour increments for a lot of time beyond that. So if we look at the 4-day snowfall here, look how much snow is expected from the time frame here of the last day of January through February 3rd. Again, some level of snow up here. We'll get another clipper after this winter storm on up here to the north. But mainly back here into the Pacific Northwest, crazy snow up into those higher elevations, and even some of the valleys getting in on the action. Again, though, if you look at points further east, we're really just looking at the near-term clipper bringing that brief heavy snow to the interior northeast, and then similar impacts to the interior northeast from the next winter storm, which will probably bring 3 to 6 inches plus to some of those zones, again, mostly with higher elevation, while areas back towards the Midwest and Great Lakes just pick a dusting to a couple of inches of snow up, probably at the max unless something changes. So that is the forecasting part of this live stream for that winter storm. I hope that covers the overview of all the impacts for all areas. I think that was pretty good for just doing in about 10 to 12 minutes there of discussion. One other thing I want to cover is using this GFS blended ensemble guidance, showing you a little bit further down the line trends to watch in terms of the overall weather pattern. As we go out of January 31st into our February 1st, again, just watching action back here into the northwest, notice how some of that and some energy moving through southern Canada could transition over here into the Great Lakes. So around February 1st, February 2nd, active weather, very typical of a La Nina winter, which is cold and kind of active towards the north. Cold, snowy conditions on and off indicated by these broad signals. Am I saying it's going to be snowing in all these zones that have blue? No, this is ensemble forecasting, which is blended guidance just showing overall areas of who could see what. But overall looks active in the north around February 2nd. Some of that could move into the northeast around the end of February 2nd, which is our Sunday. New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts maybe getting some snow if this signal continues to show up for then. Then we take a little bit of a breather, still active back into the Pacific Northwest, though. And when you've got a bunch of energy moving into the Northwest, you're bound to eventually get one of these to try and form a larger scale system somewhere further east. And you can see this. I talked about this in my last forecast video. You can see it right here. If you watch these ensembles, they show some energy trying to gather down here towards the south. Nothing much, say around February 4th. But if this signal continues, watch this moisture lift up and combine with energy moving out of the Rockies. and try to form something around the Midwest February 5th or 6th. Yeah, that's a pretty good looking signal for something that could bring snow further north. Probably Ohio Valley Midwest points northbound, and then rain and maybe thunderstorms further south down through the mid-Mississippi Valley, lower Mississippi Valley plains, and then over towards the southeast. What could go out of the rest of that system and systems after that, that's just la la land at that point in time. So obviously your ensembles have so much mixed spread that you're just going to see a bunch of greens and blues going all over the screen. But you can be pretty confident with some of these ensemble signals as much as 10 days out, because this is blended guidance, and that's why I use it. And, again, you can really see that signal February 5th and 6th. Looks like the next signal for now, if it continues to hold steady after this near-term winter storm for the end of this week into the weekend. And if we look at the European ensembles, they're not going to show rain and snow zones, but they will show areas where certain amounts of precipitation are expected in certain increments. And you can see right there, look at that, February 5th, there it goes, moisture lifting north, February 6th, boom. It shows a lot of moisture right in here. And again, the further north you go in that moisture, that could be a snow event somewhere further north. So some of these areas in the Midwest and the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley that have actually seen less snow than Florida so far this winter because of that historic winter storm last week. The Midwest, Great Lakes, you name it, up here in the north. Looks like this pattern is going to be fairly favorable for whatever comes through those zones to fall as snow with the colder pattern. In terms of your overall temperature anomalies that we're going to be looking at in the overall pattern ahead, notice we're warm and then we briefly cool down behind the winter storm at the end of this week into the weekend, but then look at that, we warm right back up. And then this is what I think leads to your winter storm pattern into areas further north as we go deeper into February. You've got colder air continuing to try and nudge in from the northwest, warmer air down here towards the south, and that's why it looks like a snow type of pattern up here and a severe weather / just rain and storms pattern further south as we go into February. So that is the overall thing we're looking at here. As of now, it doesn't look like any sort of extreme cold blast signals are showing up, but it might get colder even into the east after a warm-up by the time we get to the end of the first week of February and into that weekend. We'll see. Time will tell with that. But you can see lots of warm-ups before we see a lot of the country have a chance to cool down. But that is it with the forecasting part of this live stream. I just want to check out some of the live chat messages that we have on here right now. We had Jake's Awesome Vids said, hello, thank you very much for tuning in. Michelle Toon said, thank you for dedicating your time. Very welcome. Thank you for tuning in and dedicating your time to watching. Liam Wolf says, hello to you. Drew Crouch and Daisy also in the chat. And I appreciate the compliment there, Drew, on the awesome forecasting. I appreciate that very much. But that's about it for this live update again. I've got a busy rest of the week and going to kind of regroup and then get the next update out as we get to around Saturday or Sunday. I don't know exactly what day, but I think from there we're definitely going to be back on the track of daily or every other day type of content like I usually am for videos and or live streams depending on the event, forecasting live streams that is. So that is my plan here as we finish January and push into February, looking at the overall trends in the weather pattern as well. Again, it's going to be warm for a lot of areas further south and east, and it's this boundary between warm and cold that really keeps the Midwest and North active. So that's going to be something we're tracking into February. Of course, I know, even when snow's not hitting the south, there are still some of you who are interested in this weather content, so we're going to get back again, once my busy week is over, to that consistent uploading, and hopefully that'll be here to stay for quite a while, starting around, again, probably February 1st or 2nd is going to be when a streak of more consistent every other day type of videos begins going once again. So I'm going to quit rambling here. I see a few more messages coming in the live chat. Hello, Indiana Hamilton. We've got Country Sport Productions. Will Dallas get any snow? Dallas is out of the woods for a while. Until this cool down can get here based on this ensemble guidance, which it wouldn't be until some point after February 7th or 8th, we are downright warmer than average in Dallas, and we're not looking at any sort of major chances of snow. We might cool down briefly at the end of this week, but warmer air is going to be the trend, and warmer air in Dallas keeps you well away from snowfall. Let's just say that. Do I see the system for February 4th being a large scale for central Wisconsin? Aaron Schmelz says, yes. Very good question. I see it being a possibility. I shouldn't say yes. I should say I see it being a possibility to be large scale. Reason being, here's your European ensembles 6-hour precipitation increments. Now, for purposes of me explaining this, let me just show you what this near-term system looks like. Obviously, you can see how compact it is on this blended guidance because all the members are basically coming into agreement that this is what the system is going to look like for around Friday. So again, everything broadens out. You can just see that by all those grays and greens filling up the screen. That's naturally going to happen once you get here into that longer range like the 5th or the 6th anyway. But the fact that we see a lot of greens expanding over this area and some grays indicates to me there's going to be a system in this area around February 5th or 6th. So yeah, I think central Wisconsin could be definitely on the good side in terms of snowfall if you're a snow fan for winter weather sometime around February 5th or 6th. And even before that, with clippers moving through, we could see at least some level of wintry weather. Here's our GFS ensemble, that same thing, that same type of map. Not as bullish, but if we look at that, you can see, the same general time frame, somewhere 5th, 6th, 7th. Looks like a really active setup, even more active than the Clippers beforehand. Could begin moving some snow up there into Wisconsin. So I'll keep you updated on that. I don't want anybody to, just jump the gun and say that it's going to be all out crazy up there in Wisconsin. Although I'm sure some guy will already be posting monster blizzards are going to be on the way up there. Not going to, name drop that, but you know who I'm talking about if you've seen the other weather content here on YouTube. Jake's Awesome Vid said, I'm ready for the mid-50s here Thursday. And yeah, and you're normally commenting from Wisconsin, so yeah, it's going to be warm up there before we get that cool down that's going to elevate those snow chances again for the north. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Let's briefly, since I'm not going to have another video out for a few days here, let's show those temperatures. Where'd it go? Oh yeah. Yeah, there it is. Sure enough. I'm not quite sure about mid-50s, but a lot of low to low 50s up here into Wisconsin. And those are going to be record-breaking warm highs on Thursday as, look at those temperature anomalies Wednesday, crazy up there for the north. As that ridge builds in ahead of that system Friday into Saturday. And look at that right behind that system, we just warmed back up again. But there you go. Looks like by Monday, your warmer air is being pushed to the south. With cooler air moving in from the north, this is already setting up that pattern that could lead to that bigger storm by February 5th or 6th. Maybe sooner, maybe later. You are welcome, Aaron Smells. I hope I'm Smelzel. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I apologize if not. But with that being said, that is going to be it for this live stream. Just because I'm not going to be producing any content, video or live stream wise Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and maybe Saturday, depending on if I upload Saturday or Sunday to start my consistent uploads again. Just because I'm not going to be uploading then doesn't mean I'm not going to be working on stuff. I have some things that I am currently working on in terms of graphics that I'm making here, templates for graphics that I'm working on here, and behind the scenes. I showed that in my last video at the end. If you haven't checked that out, make sure you go do that. Hit the like button on that video, all that fun stuff. But at the end of that video, I showed a template. I'm going to try and expand those templates that show city names and are able to expand into more areas. And I'm going to try and make those easy for me to work with. If they don't pan out, they don't pan out, but it's something that I'm trying to work on, and even if that doesn't work, I've got some new transitions and things I'm going to try and add into the videos that shouldn't take long to do. So just a few new things should be coming to the channel, and you might notice those as early as with that next video into the upcoming weekend. But until then, I appreciate everybody who has been with me, and the 48 of you who are on here right now. I know are definitely some of those dedicated followers, even when it's not necessarily snowing like crazy all over the country. So I appreciate you for tuning in and watching the update for the winter storm coming later this week. Won't be long before we're done talking about winter storms and we're talking about severe weather. But I digress from that, and I just want to say I appreciate all the support again. I'll see you in the next live stream, everyone. But thank you to everybody who's tuned in here. Have a nice night, and I'll catch you this upcoming weekend. Make sure you're staying tuned to the community tab on my channel. I'll keep you updated on my plans for videos and things like that.